Hi there, and welcome to A Song of Ice and Fire Explained. This is a video series where we explain the massive conspiracies going on in A Song of Ice and Fire. If you haven't seen our previous videos, we suggest watching those first. So let's continue on with Arya 1, A Game of Thrones. This chapter is 2,699 words long, and is told from the perspective of Arya, the daughter of Eddard Stark and Lady Catelyn. In this chapter, Arya runs out on her needlework session to watch the boys practice with swords in the yard with Jon Snow. This chapter is almost entirely omitted from the TV series, but does contain hints of George R.R. Martin's original outline for A Game of Thrones, where Jon and Arya are in a love triangle. Robb wounds Joffrey on the battlefield before being killed by Jaime, and Sansa betraying her family to be with Joffrey. Arya is dismayed at her crooked stitches. She can't match her sister Sansa's needlework. Their governess, Septa Mordane, coos over Princess Marcella's needlework, which Arya thinks is also crooked. Sansa is whispering with Jean Poole and Beth Castle. When Arya asks what they are whispering about, she is told it is about how handsome Prince Joffrey is, and how he complimented Sansa and will one day marry her. Arya points out that Jon Snow thinks Joffrey looks like a girl. Sansa laments that Jon gets jealous because he is a bastard, but Arya defends him, drawing the Septa's attention to her. Septa Mordane inspects Arya's stitches with everyone watching and pronounces her dissatisfaction. Arya bolts for the door, stopping only long enough to be forced to bow to Princess Marcella. Humiliated, Arya wishes she had some of her sister's skills and beauty. She has her father's looks, not the beauty of their mother like Sansa. Jean used to call her Horseface, which was all the more hurtful because the only thing that Arya could do better than Sansa was ride. That and manage a household, since Sansa has no head for figures. Arya finds her direwolf pup, Nymeria, waiting for her, and together they go to watch the boys sparring in the practice yard, not daring to go back to her room where she would be found and punished. On the covered bridge overlooking the yard, Arya comes across Jon Snow seated on a sill with Ghost, watching the fighting below. She sits down beside him and they watch together. In the yard below, the heavily padded Bran and Prince Tommen are fighting each other with wooden swords under the watchful eye of Sir Rodrik Cassel, the Master-at-Arms. The group of spectators includes Robb and Theon. Arya remembers thinking when she was little that she was a bastard, like Jon, because they were the only children to take after their father. It'd been Jon she had gone to in her fear, and Jon who had reassured her. When Arya asks why Jon is not down in the yard with the others, Jon explains that bastards are not allowed to damage princes. Only true-born swords can do that. Arya says she could fight as well as Bran, who was only 7, while she is 9. But Jon says she doesn't have enough strength for a longsword. Jon points out that the newly arrived Prince Joffrey is wearing a sigil that has both a stag and lion on it, giving his mother's Lannister sigil equal status to the royal Baratheon sigil. Jon suggests that Arya should wear a combination sigil for the Starks and Tullys, but Arya jokes that a wolf with a trout in its mouth would look silly. She questions why a girl would need a sigil if she isn't allowed to fight. Jon shrugs that girls get the sigils but not the swords, while bastards get the swords but not the sigils. Below, Bran has knocked Tommen down, and Sir Rodrik calls Robb and Joffrey for a bout. Joffrey acts as if it is beneath his dignity to fight Starks with practice swords. He suggests real swords, and Robb readily accepts. Jon comments to Arya that Joffrey truly is a little shit. So Rodrik states that he will only allow blunted, tawny swords. Joffrey's scarred bodyguard, Sandor Clegane, remarks that he killed a man with a real sword when he was only 12. Joffrey makes a few more condescending remarks that enrage Robb, then feigns a yawn and leaves with Tommen. Jon encourages Arya to go to her room and face her punishment. Arya insists it is not fair, but Jon says that nothing is fair as he walks away with Ghost. Arya returns to her room to find not only Septa Mordane, but also her mother. And this is where Arya 1, A Game of Thrones ends. Now, there really are no major conspiracies being foreshadowed in this chapter. However, this chapter might have been written as part of George's 13 chapters from his original outline, as described here in a letter to his bookseller in 1993. We'll only be mentioning the parts relevant to this chapter. Dear Ralph, here are the first 13 chapters, 170 pages, of the high fantasy novel I promised you, which I'm calling A Game of Thrones. When completed, this will be the first volume in what I see as an epic trilogy with the overall title, A Song of Ice and Fire. As you know, I don't outline my novels. I find that if I know exactly where a book is going, I lose all interest in writing it. I do, however, have some strong notions as to the overall structure of the story I'm telling, and the eventual fate of many of the principal characters in the drama. Roughly speaking, there are 3 major conflicts set in motion in the chapters enclosed. These will form the major plot threads of the trilogy, intertwining each other in what should be a complex but exciting narrative tapestry. Each of the conflicts presents a major threat to the peace of my imaginary realm, the Seven Kingdoms, and to the lives of my principal characters. The first threat grows from the enmity between the great houses of Lannister and Stark as it plays out in a cycle of plot, counterplot, ambition, murder, and revenge, with the Iron Throne of the Seven Kingdoms as the ultimate prize. This will form the backbone of the first volume of the trilogy, A Game of Thrones. While the Lion of Lannister and the Direwolf of Stark snarl and scrap, however, a second and greater threat takes shape across the narrow sea, where the Dothraki horse lords mass their barbarian hordes for a great invasion of the Seven Kingdoms. Led by the fierce and beautiful Daenerys Stormborn, the last of the Targaryen Dragon Lords. The Dothraki invasion will be the central story of my second book, A Dance with Dragons. The greatest danger of all, however, comes from the north. From the icy wastes beyond the wall, where half-forgotten demons out of legend, the inhuman others, raise cold legions of the undead and the neverborn, and prepare to ride down on the winds of winter to extinguish everything that we would call life. The only thing that stands between the Seven Kingdoms and an endless night is the wall, and a handful of men in black called the Night's Watch. Their story will be in the heart of my third volume, The Winds of Winter. The final battle will also draw together characters and plot threads left from the first 2 books and resolve all in one huge climax. The 13 chapters on hand should give you a notion as to my narrative strategy. All 3 books will feature a complex mosaic of intercutting points of views among various of my large and diverse cast of players. The cast will not always remain the same, old characters will die, and new ones will be introduced. Some of the fatalities will include sympathetic viewpoint characters. I want the readers to feel that no one is ever completely safe, not even the characters who seem to be the heroes. The suspense always ratchets up a notch when you know that any character can die at any time. 5 central characters will make it through all 3 volumes. However, growing from children to adults and changing the world and themselves in the process. In a sense, my trilogy is almost a generational saga, telling the life stories of these 5 characters, 3 men and 2 women. My 5 key players are Tyrion Lannister, Daenerys Targaryen, and 3 of the children of Winterfell, Arya, Bran, and the bastard Jon Snow. All of them are introduced at some length in the chapters you have hand. This is going to be, I hope, quite an epic. Epic in its scale, epic in its actions, and epic in its length. I see all 3 volumes as big books, running about 700 to 800 manuscript pages, so things are just barely getting underway in the 13 chapters I've sent you. I have quite a clear notion of how the story is going to unfold in the first volume. A Game of Thrones. Things will get a lot worse for the poor Starks before they get better, I'm afraid. Lord Eddard Stark and his wife Catelyn Tully are both doomed, and will perish at the hands of their enemies. Ned will discover what happened to his friend, Jon Arryn, but before he can act on his knowledge, King Robert will have an unfortunate accident, and the throne will pass to his sullen and brutal son, Joffrey, still a minor. Joffrey will not be sympathetic, and Ned will be accused of treason, but before he is taken, he will help his wife and his daughter, Arya, escape back to Winterfell. Each of the contending families will learn it has a member of dubious loyalty in its midst. Sansa Stark, wed to Joffrey Baratheon, will bear him a son, the heir to the throne. And when the crunch comes, she will choose her husband and child over her parents and siblings, a choice she will later bitterly rue. Tyrion Lannister, meanwhile, will befriend both Sansa and her sister Arya, while growing more and more disenchanted with his own family. Young Bran will come out of his coma after a strange prophetic dream, only to discover that he will never walk again. He will turn to magic, at first in the hope of restoring his legs, but later for its own sake. When his father, Eddard Stark, is executed, Bran will see the shape of doom descending on all of them, but nothing he can say will stop his brother Robb from calling the banners in rebellion. All the North will be inflamed by war, Robb will win several splendid victories, and maim Joffrey Baratheon on the battlefield. But in the end, he will not be able to stand against Jaime and Tyrion Lannister and their allies. Robb Stark will die in battle, and Tyrion Lannister will besiege and burn Winterfell. Jon Snow, the bastard, will remain in the far north. He will mature into a ranger of great daring, and ultimately will succeed his uncle as the commander of the Night's Watch. When Winterfell burns, Catelyn Stark will be forced to flee north with her son Bran and her daughter Arya. Wounded by Lannister riders, they will seek refuge at the Wall. But the men of the Night's Watch give up their families when they take the Black, and Jon and Benjen will not be able to help to Jon's anguish. It will lead to a bitter estrangement between Jon and Bran. Arya will be more forgiving until she realizes with terror that she has fallen in love with Jon, who is not only her half-brother, but a man of the Night's Watch, sworn to celibacy. Their passion will continue to torment Jon and Arya throughout the trilogy, until the secret of Jon's true parentage is finally revealed in the last book. Abandoned by the Night's Watch, Catelyn and her children will find their only hope of safety lies even further north, beyond the Wall, where they fall into the hands of Mance Rayder, the king beyond the Wall, and get a dreadful glimpse of the inhuman others as they attack the wildling encampment. Bran's magic, Arya's sword needle, and the savagery of their direwolves will help them survive, but their mother Catelyn will die at the hands of the others, which is kind of like her becoming Lady Stoneheart in A Feast for Crows. And back to this chapter, Arya not having any friends would lead her and Jon becoming close. Robb and Joffrey's enmity is also well set up in this chapter. And that's about it for Arya 1, A Game of Thrones. In the next video, we'll cover Bran 2 and continue from there. Now, there are no differences between the HBO TV show and book, because this chapter is almost entirely omitted from the TV show, except for a brief scene introducing the Stark family before the events of Bran 1. However, ironically, the show inversed this original outline with the White Walker threat coming first in the first 3 episodes of Season 8, while the last 3 episodes are dedicated to Daenerys' invasion of Westeros. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. If you want to see more of A Song of Ice and Fire Explained, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, when you get the chance, try out Fantasy Flights, A Game of Thrones board game, digital edition.